What does the brain do while learning? So essentially, our brain is building schema constantly. And it is basically like this little picture of a network. It can only hook new information onto existing information. And the process can go either of two ways. Either we are integrating new information into something that exists and we're just sort of building it out slowly. So if you're focusing on knitting, then you start adding a new stitch, then you might start adding a new pattern, but you're building off of schema that you've already gone around needles and using the stitches and moving from one hand to the next. And the other is accommodation. This is much harder for the brain, and it's where we often run up against a lot of resistance in ourselves. And it's where the brain is really, where the schema we have has to adapt. And we can see, like, the political situation that we're currently in is a really great example of how hard it is for our brains to accommodate any new learning around our beliefs about what's right for the government, for the country, et cetera. The brain, to be in an optimal flow learning situation, accommodation becomes something that the brain is kind of eager to do. But in a lot of circumstances, the brain is shut down from that. And so some of the research on trauma is, and all the other kind of ways that kids become stressed or oppressed by the system, push up against the capacity to accommodate. This is Jean Piaget's view on what the brain is doing. And there's much more sophisticated language around this now and a lot more like deep understanding, but this is kind of a gestalt that has held up for what it is. So then what does it take to build schema? Can you go back? Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about each of these 4 pieces. This is by no means the whole territory, but it will give us a little bit of a picture of 4 important ingredients. And I would say there are more ingredients, but this is, if these 4 things are in place, a lot can happen in the classroom, in schools, either remote or in the classroom. All right, so let's jump right in and go. Usually many people have heard of the zone of proximal development. Just as this is a chart that was a little bit less seen than some of the others, which is we tend to know stage 1 is where really you need some support in order to learn. It doesn't have to be a parent or expert or teachers. It can be peers, it can be coaches, it can be YouTube, but it is definitely the place where we aren't sure how to put something together ourselves and we need some assistance. The second stage is when we can really begin to, we're making enough meaning that we can begin to assist ourselves. We can look at something and say, this isn't quite right. I'm going to try this other thing, or I'm cooking this recipe and it needs more salt, or I know what spice I could add to make it really have more flavor. You're starting to be able to help yourself with what it is you're working on. The third place is when it really becomes automatized and internalized. And interestingly enough, Vygotsky used the words fossilization, which we usually associate with something, unbendable. And again, if you think back to making schema, the notion of if we get to a place where our schema are relatively set and we're not that open, we can't figure out how to adapt them, there's a kind of fossilization there. The last piece, unfortunately, and this is stage 4, is often not seen very often in charts about the ZPD, is a kind of de-automization where we lose ground. So when people talk about learning loss in the summer, or everybody's talking about kids getting behind because of COVID, that's in this stage 4. And it needs to go back. You need to go back in a recursive loop, basically, usually to stage 2, sometimes to stage 1. To relearn, re-stretch, redevelop, reconsolidate what the learning is. So one of the things that is, we've all read a million articles on this probably at this point, is as students are coming into school this fall, many of them have had a wide variety of options of what their learning has been like for the last 8 months, and they will be in all different parts of this stage, of these stages. There is not going to be one, they're not all going to be in stage 2. They're not all going to be in stage 1. And trying to figure out how to address that in a hybrid or remote situation is particularly challenging because we are not used to that. So even if we're very good at it in our own individual classrooms, and it's really hard just in an individual classroom, the idea of doing it remotely with all of the other constraints that you're struggling with can feel very overwhelming. So I want to just put that there. And I'm just noticing the comment by Jason. Yeah, I would agree with you, Jason. I don't think it's that obvious that people are in a stage 1 or a stage 2, but I do think you can say, you can generally think of it as a heuristic where you're thinking about, oh, I see that you're watching lots of YouTube videos and trying to figure something out. That's more of a stage 1 kind of activity. So it's not so much to label kids in any way, sort of, but more to give oneself an idea of, oh, I've got to remember that if I'm teaching a unit on DNA that they should have had last spring, the kids could be all over the map. Some will have forgotten what DNA is as a word. Some will be working on trying to understand it themselves, and they would have watched some videos by themselves. So it's much more, you want to think about it more as a gestalt, more as a heuristic. It's a way to think about the role of learning, or the work of learning, is moving through stages 1 through 3 and trying to avoid stage 4, I would say. Let's go to the next stage, the next key ingredient. So there's a lot of reasons to organize a curriculum, a classroom, a lesson around cultural relevance, just for social justice reasons alone, just for the idea of centering lots of different people's experiences. These are all critical. There's another piece to this that is essential that links to what I said about schema, which is schema are grounded in culture. What we believe, what we know, it's all grounded in our personal experiences, what we've been surrounded with. Culture could mean the biggest sense of culture, like a religious group, an ethnic group, a group of people from the same country who come to the US. It can also mean the smallest thing. It can mean the culture of your family and what you were exposed to. It can mean class, which is often rooted in really serious class differences. So when I use the word cultural, I do mean it can be very specifically around decentering whiteness, or much more generally around the idea that we all come into school and learning with different cultural experiences, just by nature of growing up in different families, different neighborhoods, different communities. And if we tie that to schema, the thing to remember is you can only really internalize and learn new material if it can attach to schema. So if schools are really organized around schema that speaks specifically to kids from a certain culture, community, set of values and beliefs, all of the students who have a different experience of culture and a different set, they have a different schema. And a lot of that learning will not attach, because there is nothing in the schema to hold to attach it to. And so that can, we see that all the time. Teachers are 77% white women. We have particular backgrounds, we have particular experiences. We are by no means a monolith, but there are certain touchstones for a lot of us as white women educators that allow us to have certain experiences and to think about schools in certain ways, and to build classrooms that center certain kinds of experiences. So this is essential, both from a perspective of just what's right, who needs to be included in the curriculum, in the literature, in the conversations, and also just literally, if we don't attend to this, it is a serious inequity issue from a neural network perspective. All right. So this is lots of people have have kind of proven or talked about the fact that learning is socially constructed. That doesn't mean you're always with somebody when you learn, but that a lot of meaning making occurs in community or in interaction with humans. So in a remote context, this is particularly challenging and very, very important. So I'm going to just show you, this is, I think, it's a 2 or 3 minute video by a researcher who has been studying learning in babies. And I was blown away by it. It's really powerful. So Lori, can you, oops, jump us into that? Can you turn it up a little, Lori?
The power of the social brain has been totally underestimated. It's a driving force in learning. It's the gateway to cognition. We have evidence that the social brain is operating to assist learning throughout the lifespan. So let's think about human babies. We know in the development of language that there's a very important period between 6 months and 12 months of age where babies are mastering the sounds of language. So we've done experiments in which babies are exposed to a foreign language right at that critical moment. They're listening to a Mandarin speaker when they're growing up in an English family. What we've demonstrated is that if a baby at 9 months has 12 sessions of play with a live human speaker, they learn so well that they're statistically equivalent to the babies in the foreign country who've been listening for 10 months. However, if the babies are exposed to the same material at the same time, same room, same dosage, but not exposed to a live human being and instead on a beautiful DVD, they stare at it, you think they're learning, but the brain tests following exposure show that the kids in the machine group learned nothing, but the babies in the live group learned so well they matched the babies in the foreign country. So there's something about being in the presence of another human being and watching the eyes and watching the movements and paying attention to what that person is doing. That social context is extremely important to learning. We can see it in school-age children who use the social brain when they're interacting with one another to collaborate, when they're studying how another person goes at it, when they're watching the eyes, even unconsciously, of their study partner to work towards a solution together. In fact, I like to say the social brain gates human learning, that without the motivation and information provided by the social brain, learning just doesn't take off in the same way that it does when the social brain is engaged.
All right. So Lori just put a link to our deck in the chat. It's you all have viewing access, but feel free to make a copy and use it in whatever way you will. When you go to this particular video, you'll see that there's actually 3 or 4 videos that are done all short like this, 2 or 3 minutes, and all very compelling. All right, so learning is social. And then the last yeah, thanks, Lori. The last piece I want to just talk through for a quick moment of the ingredients, the 4th ingredient, is this idea of self-regulated learning strategies. And it is not just, when we say self-regulated learning, that is not the same thing as self-discipline. It's the ability to manage one's learning and use strategies to push it forward. So it's the concept of being in charge, having agency over one's own learning. And this chart, which you'll see if you open the deck, takes you through kind of the difference between what they call, students at the center, that used to be at Jobs for the Future, called naive self-regulators versus skillful self-regulators. So you can see they've moved very much away from negative language. This is not like kids who can't self-regulate. It's people who are learning. It's a developmental process. People who are learning to self-regulate, and then what it looks like at the highest levels. And you can see this is a particularly challenging prospect in the hybrid and remote setting. I would say hybrid learning in particular makes this virtually impossible. If you don't already have self-regulated learning skills, the hybrid model is going to interrupt this, except for only a few students. And the reason I make that claim is the idea that, so one, if you're on the screen and there's kids in person in front with the teacher, you are like that baby looking at the screen with no human interaction. So there's no social construct there for you. The second piece is the teachers only have limited ability to interact with a number of people, and they are basically, the lean will always be towards the students who are right there in front of them. So this becomes like helping students self-regulate, helping the students who are at home learn to self-regulate is really critical. And our view, and Circulos is going to share a little bit about this, is that competencies that encourage and teach students independent learning strategies and self-regulated learning are critical, and can actually help mitigate some of the challenges of being stuck behind a screen, and especially in a hybrid context. So I'm going to so that's kind of a quick spin through 4 pieces of the research. Like I said, by no means exhaustive, just to kind of ground us at what is a challenge as we think about hybrid and remote. And Lori's going to do a little bit of talking now about pedagogy and, kind of how do you deal with, in some ways, the social construction and also the self-regulation. So I turn it over to you, Lori.
Thank you, Antonia. So thinking, how do we make sense of all that Antonia has kind of walked us through, which is really, there's so much more. It's just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. And this is Redesigns offering for a framework for a learner-centered community pedagogy. And we see competency-based mastery education as great examples of trying to put these ideas into practice. And so there's so much here to unpack, as I said, so I'm going to give you a very high overview, and we're going to dig into expanded talk and conferencing over here in the orange circle of Go. But it starts with readying the learning environment, right? How are you engaging the social learner? How are you learning who your kids are, right? As Antonia has been walking us through. So you got to think about what is that setting? And now we have more variables, right? We're not just arranging furniture and setting up a rug. We're trying to recreate some of those spaces, right, in virtual and hybrid ways. Setting the learning, then we need to set the pathway. Where is it that we want to take kids within this learning environment, right? Where are we going together? And that's going to be around like curriculum and competencies, and also like what we're doing as we see what learners are doing, right? As we see where they're at, how are we adjusting, right? The pathway, how are we adjusting the environment? And the strategies in Go is really, you see the arrows and the circles. So hopefully you get the idea that it's very iterative. These are high leverage strategies, right, that bring to life, right, what we know about how we learn, and offer kind of specific routines and to build into your learning environment. So just gonna say a little bit more about each of these in our context for for really thinking about how we meet students where they are. And this framework is less, there isn't like a checklist where it's like, do this and then you're ready, do this and then you're set, now go. It's more of a framework for thinking about what am I doing to ready the learning environment, and then how can I do it in a way that is supporting learners, right, in a learner-centered way. So there's lots of different practices and ways of doing things, and it's about tying it into the framework and knowing that it's supporting learner-centered practice. So when we think now about readying the learning environment, we have some new questions, right? We have an expanded set of tools, and in some ways it's expanded, and in some ways those tools were there, but now we are forced into using them. So how do we create space to learn, for students to learn as individuals and small groups and large groups, right? We can still do that, but we're now doing it, right, with Zoom and with other strategies. And then once we've created those spaces, how do we want to use that synchronous time? So we want to think about, are we maximizing, are we using all the tools like breakout rooms and one-on-ones and chats and running Google Docs for data notebooks? So there's an ongoing evidence of learning. And then in our synchronous time, it is important, but can we start to trust learners so that we use that time for discussion, for going deeper, and not just time for walking them through what we want them to do independently? So how do we teach them how to be independent in order to use our synchronous time in ways that really are focused on modeling and application and collaborating in all the new ways we can imagine? And then a third question is how can our routines help us to support students, right? How do we build routines that model and shape the pathway for them? And for example, thinking about the norms and how do you engage kids, right? Today, right, if we were meeting regularly, right, we would have the routine of everyone saying something, even if it's saying it in the chat. How do you get kids to be there, right? And that this is a ritual, right, that we have. So those are just some, there's lots of ways. There's not one way to do these things, but it's sort of opening your mind to what are all the ways that we can do these and which ones though are going to work for my learners and for me. Set is really thinking about, well, where are we taking kids, right? If we want to meet kids where they are, we need to know where we're taking them. We need to know what it looks like. So that's going to be around, you might have competencies with developmental continua that say, what does it look like as I learn and develop this skill? You might not have that all together, and that's okay too, but thinking about what is that goal? What is the thing you want kids to be able to do next year, in 5 years, when they're 22, and you want them to really remember and have this learning that is not just superficial, but really is lasting and is in the hands of students. And then what is the pathway? What are the curricular pathways that kids can follow, right, to get to those goals? And we've heard in a few different places in breakout sessions and in the plenary sessions, how do we think broadly, right? If we're really clear on what the goals are and how well we want kids to get how well we want kids to demonstrate at what level, we can start to open up rather than close, right? What are the pathways to get there? There isn't one pathway, right? Once we know and are clear in that destination, we can open up our imaginations about the different ways that we can get there. And there's, again, the students need that agency and self-regulation in order to be able to engage with that. So early on, we're using our synchronous space to model, to teach kids those strategies so that hopefully they can then engage, right? They can make the connection between their job with the water irrigation. If you were listening to, I think, Steve Kozakowski from VLAX earlier, right? We can help them make the connection of what they're experiencing in their lives to the goals that we have. And so it's a combination of helping kids have those strategies and that ability to self-regulate and have agency in their learning and tie it to the curriculum. And then here in this set as well, right, we want to know where kids are now, but over time, right, kids are going to be in different places. So we need to be able to continue to gather evidence. And I think one of the biggest things that pandemic has revealed is like, you could kind of know where kids are at. It's easier when they're right in front of you physically. And now we really need to focus on what's the evidence of learning, right? What is the evidence of meaningful progress for this student? And then now we're going to dig in and focus in on these two. And why these two? So expanded talk, we in order to get that evidence, we need to have kids telling us what they are thinking, right? So the more we can have them engage, just starting with like, who are you? How are you feeling today? Or just like, are you here? Yes, no, just getting practically engaging. But those are stepping stones, right, to really thinking about engaging in deeper learning, developing more complex skills. So talk can be in the chat, it can be in a journal that maybe is a Google Doc. But how do we really, if we can't, we need to know where they are before we can meet them there. And then conferencing and feedback helps us to get deeper into that, right? We get to know them and build relationships, and we also get to assess their skills. So we can be doing some of those things at the same time, right? So developing relationships gives us insight, right, into where kids are at, and it also builds the trust to help us support our learners in reaching the destinations we set. So that's a little bit of a framework to think about. What does it mean to meet students where they're at? There's all these different parts of the system that we need to be tending to. And so what better way than to like dig into a real case? And I'm going to invite Jessica and Deborah to share a little bit about Circulos and their innovation and their core innovations.
Thank you guys so much. I was just taking so many notes. I'm just so excited. When I'm looking at your framework, I'm just seeing so many connections between what we're doing and just the research behind it. So as mentioned earlier, Circulos is a small innovative school. We're located in Santa Ana Unified. We're all about teaching students to create connections to themselves, to their learning, to their community, and then to really look beyond that and impact the world around them. And so we do that through our 4 core innovations, and just thinking about this connection and connecting it back to the key ingredients. I'm just really excited to kind of go back to my school and talk about the why behind what we're doing, because if we look at the cultural relevance, that's all about me. And so when we look at the mentor circles and the small learning communities, this is a place where all students' voices are seen and heard. We have small class sizes. We have mentor circles that are integrated into our schedule, and students have constant opportunities to develop and reflect and cultivate their voice. So that's part of one of those key ingredients that you guys had mentioned earlier. The next one is flexible learning environments. This is where the schedules are created with students' personal learning profiles and their goals in mind. And so then that comes in with some of those, like, how are we readying the learning environment? So I'm taking notes on all the different things that you guys are talking about to kind of make those connections. That's really exciting, kind of what we're doing. So students are given in this, when we do flexible learning environments, we talk about how our schedules are created to meet those needs, where students can have small group interactions, one-to-one mentorship, interventions, or enrichment sessions to enhance their learning journey. We have something called Community Week, where we take 3 weeks out to reflect, but also to have passion sessions and different things like that, and focus sessions on students who need, more interventions there. So then we also have project place-based learning. We call it P²BL because it's project and place-based learning. And then in the virtual environment, we invite our partners, and they come with us into our virtual classroom. So we've been doing that just like it was as if we were in school. So we connect with our community partners, local businesses, design firms, universities, arts institutions, and students research issues that matter to their lives, their community, and the whole world. So this helps us to create that authenticity and then that engaging relevance for them. When we're out in the space, the place is viewed as text and the city is our classroom. So we try to bring that to them. Our 4th core innovation is our competencies. So within those projects that students are doing, because our school is a project-based learning school, so our curriculum is all integrated and project-based. So within those projects, design to prepare students to grow within our 12 Circulos competencies. So each competency is developed over a period of time and assessed, and it's based on specific criteria and skills. And so we ensure that within each project set that the competencies are integrated with the learning targets, and that's something that teachers are learning how to do right now as well. So so those are our four core innovations, and this is a sort of just a little visual that can show you guys what some of ours are. We have focus competency right now, which is cultivate your voice. Just like you said, in this virtual environment, it's really, really important to try to engage the students in any, in that way. And so we're working also with Redesign to have that be a part of what we focus on, communicate effectively and cultivate voice. So.
All right. Do you guys want? I can just play the video. This is gonna.
We can tell you a little bit about it. Deborah, do you want to tell them a little bit about this video? This is really exciting.
Yeah.
I hope
So we have a recap video. It's just a quick 5-minute video here that kind of showcases our recent project that was done in collaboration with a few community partners. And this was in our 9th grade humanities course, where students were learning about how to make invisible stories visible. And so enjoy.
Chase the fear from my head. Chase the fear from my head. Chase the fear from my head. Chase the fear from my head.
I am the light that lights the way. I wonder if darkness could kill light. I hear evil man counting money. I see a bee getting honey. I wonder if a bird could fly without a say words. I am the light that lights the way. I prefer to see the world like a visionary. I feel like I see something to carry. I touch the bench leading up to my ferry. I cry that a forest just hit their toe on the stairs. I wonder if it's a worry that governments wouldn't care. I am the light that lights the way. I understand that we can't do something to fix all our problems. I say we need to do something to solve them. I dream that we could do something great. I hope we could stop killing some random snakes for fun. I am the light that lights the way. I see we need to hit our head and get bumped. That we should have fixed it, that we should have clicked it, and that we should have made it there to the stare of impossibilities. So I guess it's just you and me. But always remember that, okay? I am the light that lights the way.
Hi, I'm Kimberly. Insecurities are habits built by doubt. As a child, I was bubbly and loud. If you were to see a picture of me smiling, you could almost hear it. A child free from worries, excited for each day. That is until I look in the mirror for too long. I begin to notice every little imperfection from head to toe. Everything seems so out of place. Constantly looking at a scale to determine what I wear. Constantly practicing a smile so others won't ask what's wrong, as if they care. Constantly trying to make my parents proud, only to be told try harder. Constantly laughing at any insult in the form of a joke by my so-called friends. People don't understand how their words can hurt others. A small joke to you could be someone's deepest insecurity. I'm slowly learning to dance with my insecurities because to me they are like a shadow. They whisper so that only I can hear them. Looking in the mirror first thing in the morning can be the worst at times. I just stare at my blatant face with only sorrow. From under bags that hang like crescent moons, to my shadows whispering I am unloved. To them telling me I could always stand to lose a few pounds, to them telling me I will be forgotten. It doesn't matter at times, because at the end of the day they'll always be there. Sometimes they scream, sometimes they whisper, but it's not like I can get rid of them, even if I wanted to.
A new idea, all right? What did you gain? What did you learn?
Understanding other people's story makes you feel like you're not alone. So it's just like a little boost of empowerment.
He wrote it in chat. Based on his experience with this season, I will be more understanding of others.
I have a few I'm going to consolidate. So it feels normal to be in class on screen and to spend time having fun together in class. There's so many ways to express your story and never be ashamed of what you do.
Thank you, Sharon and Allie, for those fun activities you gave us. Dancing was weird at first, but then you get more used to it. The art project was also really fun and gave us a lot of things to do to draw our portraits. Since I like drawing, I had so many ideas. Overall, it was a fun time, and thank you for sticking with us.
Like she said, you are so important and so worthy, and your stories have really changed me too. I feel more confident because of being with you.
And it's just so moving to hear your stories, and I'm just so happy to hear that moving kind of got you guys more confident and your art got you more confident in writing.
I was very moved about your story. You really don't meet that much people that use the story as a form of helping others, and you honestly made me change who I am. I was not doing well. As a person that has depression, anxiety like you, we're two different people, but we're not that different.
Watch it one more time.
Chase the fear from my head.
You can if I'm in control. You can watch it again if you want to. I'll make sure we put the slides link again for everyone in case you missed it before. But in our remaining 15 minutes, in 10 of those minutes, we want to give a little bit more time to dig into, to make the connection, right, to our arc of learning here, of how our expanded talk and conferencing and feedback in the framework showing up in practice here, and how does it spark your own, invite people to say, how does it spark like what you're doing? Maybe you're very likely already doing some of things, and there's also maybe a new idea in there. So I am going to, I'm opening a breakout room, and I think you can join it. And the conferencing and feedback. So if you want to dig in deeper into that one, click in. Are people seeing it or not?
Not yet, Lori.
Not yet.
I see it very small at the bottom of the screen. It just said join breakout room. It was very small.
Okay, so if you want to join that one, jump in there, and otherwise just ignore it, and you'll stay in the main room for expanded talk. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna.
And the Circulos women will be splitting up, one in each room, so you can hear and ask some questions.
I see at least one person has gone there. So
I still don't see it.
Yeah.
When I click on breakout rooms, that's where I see it. So if you click on breakout rooms, it should show up conferencing and feedback. And when you hover over it, it says join.
It might be in the three dot more menu.
Yeah, at the bottom, that box that says breakout rooms right next to reactions at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, then there's like a conferencing and feedback with a little number that turns into join. It's kind of complicated on Zoom. So that's
it's all blank on the Zoom I'm using. Yeah, it's all blank.
Because
if you haven't updated your Zoom, it won't show up.
Oh.
Well, why don't I try again? I think that you'll be able to join different rooms, but I'm gonna just try assigning people into 2 rooms. That way people can have a little bit more intimate conversation. And let's see. And in the meanwhile, feel free to put questions in the chat if you've got those. And it's going to take a minute now, I think, to be able to do more breakout rooms. Let's see. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Add a room.
Lori, can you put me into conferencing and feedback?
I'm trying. We had wrong information there about, now I have to manually assign. If you can't figure out how to join, then I will work on manually assigning some people, starting with Antonia.
And Deborah. Oh.
Deborah is there. All right, I'm just gonna assign a handful of people, and if you want to change your name to, if you want to go to conferencing and can't figure it out, if you change your name, I'll do my best to get you to that one. Otherwise, I'm just gonna put about, yeah, half of our people. And then in the meanwhile, let me hand it over to Jessica. If you want to do that while I'm doing this, you can talk a little bit. Is this a good slide, or do you want to be on the next slide?
This is fine. Yeah. So we were just going to go ahead and kind of, there were some questions that we had talked about ahead of time. Is just, you know, and you guys can also ask questions, but we kind of just anticipated some different things. Really talking first about the name of Circulos and how it represents our beliefs about how kids learn and what they should learn. You know, the name Circulos really what represents a lot of what we believe about how people learn. Through processing information over extended periods of time, where they're given lots of opportunities to articulate their learning and their work as it relates to themselves. We always say this, we say this a lot, as it relates to myself, my community, and the world, right? So they just kind of are constantly able to reflect on those things throughout the 4 years while they're with us at our school. So circles are our signature pedagogy. So that's, our name is Circulos in Spanish, that's circles. Really where all students are given the space to develop their voice, their identity, and then understand, you know, how that relates to their learning. So it plays such a vital role in our school. Some of our artifacts from this are really our schedule. We really have to make sure that we create the space within our school and our schedule to have these opportunities. And so I don't know if you're able to go to the next slide, and I can just kind of show so if you look over here on the right side, it shows how we have this embedded within our day. We have our mentor circles, and that's one space where it's an adult assigned to about 11 students. We're really small schools, so we're able to do that. We have 10 teachers, about 12 students per teacher in those mentor circles. And those are designed at first just to get kids to feel comfortable. So they're low affective filter, you know, questions at first. And then we kind of, you know, get a little deeper as we go through the year. But what we've seen is as students go in grade levels, they become more and more confident. We have our seniors are just, you know, we wished one of them could be here today. They'd be talking the whole time. So, so they're really developing this over a course of their time with us. And it's really important. It's also embedded in our teacher professional learning. So we have embedded in our schedule a certain number of hours, 3 hours actually every Wednesday, for teachers to learn about our culture and to sort of feel the way of Circulos. And so that ends up translating also into these mentor circles. One of our teachers said, you know, it was really, really great how you guys started with the check-in questions, and then you got deeper as we got to know each other. And then we were able to then go take that into our mentor circles and to really learn those protocols that you guys have. And so this is just one of the structures that we didn't have this embedded, including the professional learning with our teachers to be able to do this. I don't know how this would really would be working. The other thing in addition to the mentor circles in our professional learning is in every class, they start with a check-in question with the students. And so for students who are a little bit shyer, they will put it in the chat, and then the teacher will gently ask, you know, hey, are you willing to share that? And so after the student's written it, it's a little bit easier just to read what they've written. So, so these are just some of the things that we have in place to sort of really develop the expanded talk that we know we need, especially in the virtual environment. And we've had people come into our classes, and we have kids on Zoom, we have kids talking, we have kids dancing now, and that's you know, in collaboration with community partners, also encouraging them to do that as well. So, so that's a little bit about, you know, our structures and that are in place to ensure that we have that expanded talk. We also have protocols that we use that are very familiar with to the kids. We have something called a find protocol, where it really starts very, you know, just simple. It's a fact. It could be that your shirt is red, right? And that just kind of gets kids going. And then we go to internal connection. So it increases in depth as you move through the protocol. And we do that in a circle. So we do have in our, even though we're not together, the teachers will create circles with the students' faces on them. And we'll sort of, you know, virtually be in a circle, and the student will know when their turn is coming based on that circle. And so each student is expected to, you know, share these. And then with students that are shyer, we work with them one-on-one. We have lots of that time also embedded within our schedule to work with them to becoming more comfortable. So that's another thing that we're doing for the expanded talk. So I don't know if you guys have any questions. We also had some questions about the exhibition that we were going to kind of talk about. That's another piece because it's a time within our schedule, again, that we've created 3 weeks called Community Week, where students stop to celebrate the learning, reflect on the learning, celebrate with our community partners, and really just get that extra, just take a moment to pause. And so that's really, really important for us as well in creating the space for students to continue to you know, learn about themselves and their learning. And it's a process, really, like it's a process oriented you know, structure that we have in place, knowing that students aren't just going to automatically, you know, just decide we're going to talk. We're just going to all of a sudden have that. A lot of people, adults, you know, didn't get that opportunity until they were in college. So, so this is just a part of who we are at our school. So I'll leave it open for a little bit of questions if you guys want to do that.
Yeah, we have just a couple minutes, so feel free to pop them in the chat or unmute and ask your question.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I put it in chat. And Jessica, does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, so is this, how many total competencies and skills do you have?
Yeah.
So we do, yeah, so that's a good question. We have 12 competencies. And you know what, we are, let me look. So
I can push back to the.
Oh, do we have? Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah, so we have 12 competencies, and then within there's a certain number of skills. So we haven't counted out how many skills exactly there are. We're still developing in this area with the competencies. We have our focus competency right now because we want to make sure that, especially in the virtual environment, that we're really focusing on the cultivating voice and the communicating effectively through writing and speaking. And so, so that's, you know, we have 12. It is a lot for us, for our teachers to learn at this time. So we're focusing on 2 at this point.
So you don't customize it for each subject area then now?
Customize, I see what you're saying. Customize the cultivate voice or the communicate effectively for each subject. No. We do have some that are a little bit more content area focused, but we actually encourage the other contents to choose ones that are outside of their content. So we have like a reason quantitatively. We would love, because we want those to reach across all content areas. We love it when our, you know, history teacher chooses that one, and our math might choose a communicate effectively, right? And so we really talk to them about these being overarching across all content areas, and we challenge our teachers to do that when they're creating their projects.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yes, and we are at time, and hopefully you see the feedback link in there. Someone asked about more links. We'll try to add those. So if you check back in the slides, we'll add anything that can be added. And we are going to do we're going to do a follow-up, the same team as a webinar November 12th, all as part of the Aurora Institute 2020. And so it'll really dig in on that like curriculum design and thinking about how do you set up the projects. So you'll hear more about this project and some others as well. If you're interested, we'd love to see you. And please do fill out the survey, which I think you can click on it in the slides. And I've also, Rebecca has put it in. Oh, and she's put the agenda. So you've got lots of surveys, and hopefully we'll see some of you again. Just a little thank you to all of you, to Jessica and Deborah and Circulos for being here and sharing your story. Yeah, I think that we can hang out here if people have lingering questions, but I know that there's a next session, I think, or maybe we might be done for today. We're done for today, right?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to put the link to your November webinar coming up to go deeper. This is Susan. Yeah, thank you so much. We are wrapping up today with these breakout sessions, and super excited for our live student panel tomorrow morning at 11. So thanks everyone. And please know Redesign has so many amazing resources that are available, openly available on their website. So I just give a shout out. Antonia, Lori, thank you so much for leading this session, and we'll wrap up for today.
Thanks so much, Susan.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks everybody.